Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. We aren't even done with fall yet, and several areas of the United States have already started to experience cold weather and in some cases even winter storms. And as we get done with fall and move into winter, things are only going to get worse because, well, that's how winter works. And even though we all know that, it seems like every year winter storms catch millions of people off guard. Seems like there's always a segment of the population that's like, wait, you mean I might get snowed in during January? While some of the things that we as preppers try to get ready for may seem theoretical or even far-fetched to some, it's a 100% certainty that a large portion of our population is going to have to deal with some sort of severe weather in the coming months. Now, about a month or so ago, I did a video showing all the things that you may want to stockpile before this coming winter. So this video isn't really going to be about that. It's not going to be about going out and buying a ton of stuff. Instead, it's going to cover some simple things that people forget to do that could go a long ways towards preparing their homes and their families for winter weather. And one very important thing that a lot of people forget to do before winter is trim any trees that are close to their homes or power lines. I live in the Piney Woods region of Texas, and while our trees are beautiful, they can also be very dangerous in some situations. In my experience, pine trees are especially problematic for two reasons. First, they're really not all that strong to begin with, especially when compared to things like oak trees. And then second of all, they don't lose all of their foliage at one time. So what you end up with is a situation where you got trees that are heavily weighed down by snow and ice and limbs start to snap off. Those can punch holes in your roof, crush your car, and then also tear down power lines. But towards the beginning of this year, we had a situation here in Texas. It was just kind of a small winter spell. It would have made you folks up north giggle, but it messed up stuff here. The neighborhood next to us has a ton of pine trees, and because those limbs started falling off, hundreds of people lost power. And we were going through just kind of surveying the damage driving through that neighborhood in my truck, and I heard cracking above our head. So I floored it and looked behind us a couple seconds later, and a pine branch just shattered on the ground. So the bottom line is, have your trees professionally trimmed so that you don't have any property damage, and also you don't injure yourself trying to trim those or have one fall on top of you. Then another thing you should do before this winter is take steps to protect your pipes from bursting. Even though a leaky pipe may not seem as scary as a gigantic limb falling on top of your head, water damage can still cost you thousands of dollars in repairs to your home, and also if it's bad enough, it could cause your home to become uninhabitable. Even doing basic things like installing covers on your exterior faucets or allowing them to drip can go a long ways towards preventing that. I tried the Freeze Miser last year, but those are only useful if your spigots are in good shape. They will not work if your spigots leak out of the top when running. Also, know where your water shutoff is and have the tools that you need to turn off the water going into your home. Before a storm hits, you may want to take something like a flag or even a yard sign and put it near where your water meter or water shutoff is if it's in the ground. That way you'll be able to find it if it gets buried by snow and hopefully reduce the amount of water damage that happens to your home. If you have any spigots that have an exposed pipe running from the ground, then be sure to wrap that in some sort of insulation. If your local hardware store is sold out of regular pipe insulation, then you can use an old pool noodle for the same purpose. You could also do this to exposed pipes in places like your attic and basement. And even though this one should be obvious to preppers, another thing that I see every winter is people ransacking hardware stores desperately trying to find a generator. So if you haven't done so already, now's a very good time to pick up some sort of backup power option, preferably before everybody else in your town decides that they need one too. And since it's so close to Christmas, you can get some pretty good deals on generators. EcoFlow, who I'd like to thank for sponsoring this video, is running a promotion where you can save up to 58% off from now until December 26th. You can find links to their sale in the description below, and if you use this code, you can get an extra 5% off. They're also doing early bird discounts on their new Delta Pro Ultra, which will be released next month. Now, I've personally done several videos in the past showing what different size solar generators can do and how they compare to gas generators. So I'm not really going to do that today. Instead, I'm going to show you some things that you can do to get the most out of your backup power option. If you already have a solar generator or just a power station by itself, be sure that it's charged up before a winter storm hits. Also, check any devices that you'd want to charge up with it, like emergency radios or flashlights, and be sure those are charged up ahead of time as well. This will just give you a head start if the lights go out because everything will be ready to go, and it'll save you from having to use any power that you have stored in here unnecessarily. One of my favorite ways to use my solar generators is to power my box freezer. Mine's pretty full, so it should do a decent job keeping itself cool, but if you have a lot of dead air space in yours, you can use things like cold packs to help fill that in. The ones that I have here are pretty big, but they're also flat, so you could use them even if you have just a small amount of space up top. You could get some smaller ones if you wanted to, because in general, the more cold stuff in a freezer, the better, because it's not going to have to work as hard to keep itself cool. And that's very beneficial if you're using a power option like this that's battery based. Another way that you can get the most out of your backup power option during a winter storm is to not use them for heating and cooking. While larger options can run things like electric griddles, keep in mind that anything that generates heat is going to be a huge power hog. So when it comes to cooking, there's a ton of good off-grid options that I have covered exhaustively on this channel in the past, so I'm not going to really go into those today, but I'll be sure to put a card for them at the end of this video. Then for warmth, if you have a fireplace, try to use that as much as possible. If you don't have one, then pick up something like a buddy heater and plenty of fuel. But by not using your generator for those very power-intensive tasks, you're going to be able to save the energy that you have in here for different tasks, like charging your phone or radio so that you can keep contact with the outside world, keeping lights on, and then also preserving food. Then, if you have solar panels and plan to use them to recharge your power station, know where and how you're going to set those up. Obviously, it needs to be in an area that gets plenty of sunlight, but also consider how you're going to protect your panels from moisture. Having a piece of plywood or even like a tarp and some cardboard that you could set your panels on can help prevent them from sinking into the snow. Now, there are some panels out there, including those made by EcoFlow, that are resistant to moisture, but you still don't want them sinking down into the snow because if it's buried, then those solar cells aren't going to be collecting any sunlight. Then for your power station, you could use something like a folding workbench to keep it off the ground. Just be sure that it's secure and won't fall over because you don't want like a big gust of wind coming and then knocking it off. Then if you have a gas generator, take the time now to make sure that it's in good shape and it'll start up when you need it to. Go ahead and change the oil and inspect your air filter and spark plug, and make sure that you have plenty of fuel for it. And if you're needing to buy fuel, I would recommend trying to find ethanol-free gas if at all possible, because that's going to be better for small engines. It's not going to corrode certain parts or gum it up. And then also it tends to store longer as well. Then there's other gear that you should test out. If you have a portable space heater, like I mentioned a second ago, go ahead and take it out and make sure that you can turn it on and that it'll stay lit. If you have a fireplace, you may want to have someone take a look at it to make sure it's in usable condition and have it cleaned out if needed. This could prevent a fire from breaking out in your chimney and then spreading to the rest of your home. And also take a look at the outside of your chimney. Make sure there's no tree branches near that could potentially catch on fire. Go ahead and change out the batteries in your smoke alarm and test them to make sure that they're working properly, and the same goes for carbon monoxide alarms as well. Then check the gauges on any fire extinguishers that you have. The little needle should be in the green part of the gauge, and if it's in the red, go ahead and replace it. Also think of other things that you can do to reduce the chances of a fire. Be sure there aren't any flammable materials in areas where you may potentially use something like a heater, candle, or anything else with an open flame. Then if you're using candles or oil lamps, if you place those on like a big cookie sheet like what you'd use for baking, that could help prevent a fire from spreading if those get knocked over. But one very easy thing that people forget to do is wash blankets. Most people probably have spare blankets and old comforters in their home, but they've probably been sitting on a shelf gathering dust for months. Doing a few loads of laundry to clean them up would make them much more enjoyable to use, especially for anyone in your home that has allergies. Then beyond those, also try to keep up with your household laundry as well. That's something I really need to work on. That way, if you lose power and water for a few days, you'll at least have clean clothes. Because if you're in a situation where you can't bathe, you don't want to make it worse by wearing the same dirty clothes over and over again. Using wet wipes or wiping yourself down with a rag can help with this, but you still want to have clean clothes, especially when it comes to things like socks and underwear, because those are the areas that tend to get a little stinkier than others and are also prone to different kinds of skin infections. Also, don't forget to take care of any elderly members of your family or others who may struggle to provide for themselves. You can make up care packages of different items that could help them get through a winter storm, like warm blankets, food, and water. These would be useful for family members who live in places like nursing homes or assisted living facilities. While it may be preferable to get them out of that situation totally, that may not be possible for everybody, or it could just be a situation where the storm is a lot worse than everybody thought it would be. But if they have those essential items, it could make a very big difference. But when putting together kits like this, you want to keep in mind that they may not be able to lift a lot of the things that you can. So instead of dropping off a 50-pound Aquatainer for them to use, maybe you just give them some water bottles instead. They can always break down that package if needed and just, handle one water bottle at a time. And you could also give them something like a squirt bottle that they could pour those water bottles into and then use them for things like hand washing or brushing their teeth. And aside from your home, you also want to take certain steps to prepare your vehicle for winter. Check the various fluids in it to make sure that their levels look good, and also check that those fluids are rated for cold weather. Then keep an eye on your tires and your vehicle's battery. Tires tend to lose pressure as temperatures drop, so have a way that you can top off your own tires without having to depend on a gas station. Then for batteries, know how old they are, and if your vehicle can do this, keep an eye on its voltage. If you start to notice that your car is getting harder to start, go ahead and replace that battery, because extreme cold will only cause those to degrade faster. And if you don't have one, picking up some sort of battery jump pack or some jumper cables would be a very good investment. Then you probably also want to build yourself a vehicle survival kit. Even something small like a backpack with a warm blanket, an extra coat, and some water in it would be better than nothing, but since you're a prepper, you're probably going to want a little more than that. I did a full video showing that a month or so ago, and I'll link to it at the end of this video. And y'all, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That'll help make sure that you are informed of my videos when they're released, rather than just relying on them popping up on the YouTube homepage when you log on, because I think there have been some situations recently where that hasn't been happening for some folks. But anyway, as we get further into the winter months, also keep an eye on weather reports. Most winter storms have at least some warning before they happen, so adjust your travel plans if there's one headed your way. Because even if your vehicle is fully prepped, it's best not to get into a bad situation if you can avoid it. Also be aware of any alternate routes that you could take in case there's some sort of pile up, because clearing those out is a lot harder during heavy snow or ice, and by the time that it's cleared out, the storm may have moved in even more and you could be stuck where you're at. Then if you're not doing this already, start keeping an eye on your gas tank to make sure that it stays at least halfway full. This will increase your chances of getting home if you're delayed, and it'll also help you stay warmer longer if you do end up getting stranded. Another thing that a lot of people forget to do before winter is take inventory of their preps. Take a look at your food reserves, your water supply, your medications, and your fuel to make sure that you actually have as much of those as you think you do. If you're new to all this, I'd recommend having a 2-week absolute minimum of supplies for general storm preparedness. As preppers, most of us are going to want to have much more than that, but generally speaking, having around 2 weeks is going to be enough to help you deal with most severe weather, unless it's something like a major hurricane or a major earthquake that causes problems on a regional scale. Then, after you've gone through your inventory, go ahead and pick up anything that you're lacking. If you want to see a full list of things that you may want to stockpile for winter, then click here. Or if you want to see that vehicle survival kit video I mentioned a second ago, then click here. Once again, I'd like to thank EcoFlow for sponsoring this video. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.